Hello and welcome to another video. This one is about the Ardale school in Stifford in Thurrock. It actually feels like such a long time ago I made the UFO video, and thank you for all the engagement on that and all the questions. As you know, everything went a little bit crazy after that video went out regarding the balloons that are flying over America, or the apparent balloons that are flying over America that got shot down, and were they Chinese balloons or weather balloons or whatever. I know people have still got their conspiracy theories about that, but it's US military, so we'll probably never know what they were. And apparently some might have been private enterprise, so they could have been drones or something like that. But again, it shows that interest of UFOs. I think for a minute there everyone thought we'd been invaded. So anyway, let's get back onto this video. So the Ardale school in Stifford. Now this was built in 1901, and it's actually the Stepney poor boys school, or poor boy and girls school, and it's where a lot of children were sent when they come from deprived homes in Stepney and East London. And you know, it's to look after them. It also had sort of like an infirmary there. It had a farm there that they could learn a trade from, but it's mainly there to look after deprived children. Now this went on to about 1930 when it was shut, and it became the Ardale school itself. That was a school for boys, and that went right way through to sort of like, I think it was about 1979, and then it changed over to an approved school. And I think by that time they only had about 60 or 70 children there, and they were the ages of like 13 to 17. So it's always been sort of a school environment, but it always looks very sort of I guess when you look at it, it almost looks like a prison. But at the time they had workshops during there that, you know, you could learn a trade or skills. And apparently from like the kids that I know that went there from in the 70s, they were really well looked after. And even after they left the school, they were still contacted and given a helping hand in their life, and sort of sorting out homes and things like that. So it had a really good merit. Now, I can't speak, and what you're going to hear in this video is a lot of, I guess, a lot of speculation regarding what could have gone on in the past. Now, we're probably looking around about 1910, and I'll get into reasons for that later on in the video. This video has only been possible by the help of residents in the new estate that's been built on that site. So the Ardale school shut in 1994, I believe, and so the housing estate was built after that. And after some residents see my videos I've been putting out, they contacted me, asked me to come down and meet them and go over their experiences of paranormal events that they've had around the area. And it's been quite interesting. It's taken quite a few weeks, actually about a month, to actually go through all their stories and put them into context where I can put them down onto this video for you. And I hope you'll be interested in what they had to say and the events that they experienced. So a couple of months ago, two families contacted me that live on the new estate down at Stifford, where the old Ardale school used to be. So for one of the families, the event started in 2010. Now, what I believe is that at that time the housing was still being developed at the back of the properties where the new estate was. And what they told me about their experiences were actually quite chilling. So they actually started in the summer when the weather was actually quite hot. All the windows in the house were wide open to let air through, and also they all slammed together. Now at the time, the wife was on her own in the house, and it made her jump. She didn't think nothing more of it. And she'd had a child that was actually in preschool, and that time she made sure all the windows were shut as she was going to pick the child up. She left, she come back, and all the windows were wide open. And, you know, again, you get paranoid. Did I shut them? Did I remember to shut them? And she goes, no, they all slammed shut. They were definitely shut. Later that afternoon, her child was sitting down playing with her toys in the living room. And the child started to laugh. And when the mother turned around and looked, there was a toy dog across the other side of the room that was moving over towards the child. And she thought it must have been a battery toy. And she's thinking, actually, I don't remember any battery toy. And she stood there watching while this dog just slid closer and closer to the child, and the child was laughing, and she found it very, very funny that one of her toys all of a sudden just started moving over. The mother thought it was very, very bizarre, it creeped her out a little bit, and later on in the evening she told her husband, and her husband was like, you sure it had just been pulled on a bit of string or something like that? She goes, no, honestly, she goes, I was sitting there and this dog started sliding across the room towards her. The husband thought it was a bit strange, but turned around and said, you know, it's probably just your imagination. So next morning they come down to have breakfast, and they was getting the child ready for go to nursery or go to preschool. And they was running around getting breakfast, and you know, the child's not allowed to play with stuff in the morning because it delays everything. And she said, you know, I was really set on a routine that she had to get up, do this, do that, and then we get out of the house and I have time to get back, do other stuff, and then I can go and do the rest of the day that I need to do before I need to go and pick her back up again. So everything was quite a set routine. And what the husband tells me was that he was standing there and literally he'd walked out the living room and there was nothing in the living room itself. No, their furniture was there, but the floor was completely clear. The child was sitting just up against the settee, with her back against the settee. He walks out and he had gone, he reckons, probably about a minute, and he turned around and walked back in, and all the children's toys were all over the floor. And he's like, he looked at his daughter and was like, she could not have done it in that amount of time. And he turned around and he said to his wife, I think we've got a ghost. Straight away, that's the first thing he says. And he turned around and she goes, what? He goes, there's no way, because she'd got all her toys out. In that time, it took me to come in and go back out. And surprisingly enough, the wife was like, no, you're the one making things up now. You thought I was going crazy yesterday, and now today you're telling me I'm going crazy. So the dad went out there, quickly tidied everything back up again. The mum got the daughter in the car. Dad went off to work. She went off, dropped the child to nursery. She come back, and again, all the toys were over the living room floor. This time, she was still really starting to freak out and getting quite emotional about what was going on. She didn't know what to do. Are we going crazy? Are we losing our minds? And you know, her husband come home that night and she said, you know, it happened again. We put all the toys away and, you know, I come back and literally those all back over the floor. So what the husband said, well, what we're going to do tonight, he had a camera and he put the camera down in the living room. He set it up and literally he left the dog toy in the middle of the room. In the morning, they come down and nothing had happened. Now, in paranormal investigations, don't really tend to get many things on film, do you? So what was you expecting? They never caught anything on film, even though they'd done it for days and days and days, and they gave up. It's getting to the start of the young daughter's proper school. This has been a summer preschool and the times were changing, so she was going to have to get up a little bit earlier to make sure that they got her to the nursery or the preschool on time. I can't remember if the nursery or preschool were the same thing. I don't know. Are they? I can't remember. My daughters were 18 and 10. It was a long time ago now. But what happened is that, again, for the first time in a very long time, they were sitting down in the living room, they was getting everything ready, and they come back in. And not the toys were all over the place. The child's clothes that she's about to put on to go to school were set out on the settee as if the child was already wearing them. They asked the child if she had done it, and of course the child was like, no, it wasn't me, I didn't do nothing. She goes, did you see anything? I went, no, I didn't see anything. So again, day went on as normal. That night they was all getting ready to go to bed. Child went to bed, the mum went to bed, and the dad was downstairs. He was just finished off watching a film. He said he was sitting in the corner and the television is just by the window that looks out onto the garden, and he thought he sees something move in the garden. And he's like, it could be a fox. They get a lot of foxes around there. So he got up and he's having a look, couldn't see nothing. He turned his back, and as he turned his back, walking back towards the settee, he said he see a young child standing in the middle of the living room. First of all, he thought it was his daughter that had come down. Very quickly, it became obvious it wasn't, as the child wasn't completely solid. And he described it as a young lad wearing a shirt, and he said it was a very tatty shirt, and it was like sort of dirty, had a lot of mud all over it, sort of scuffed up, as if he was sort of like a bit of a ruffian, you know, like playing around and, you know, playing with friends, rolling around on the floor, all that sort of stuff. He said he wasn't a very tidy child. His hair was a mess, but he looked very, very sad, very, very depressed. And the dad just stood there, and as quick as he'd seen the child vanished. He decided he wasn't going to tell his wife anything about it. He kept it to himself for quite a few weeks. Eventually he decided he was going to tell his wife about it, and it creeped her out. She said, are you doing this to scare me? Because actually, I mean, this was actually come up to Halloween, and she thought he was just playing a spooky trick. But no, after turning out, nothing else happened. Up until Christmas. On the build up to Christmas, they're getting presents ready, and they had a tree in the living room. Their young daughter was putting little presents to the side of the tree, but made a little pile. And the mum and dad asked her what she was doing, and she said, "I'm going to give them to the sad boy." And what do you mean the sad boy? She goes, "Oh, the sad boy that comes into the room." And they looked at each other, and the dad looked at his wife and was like, yeah, this is a little bit close to what he had seen, this sad, depressed child. The mum and dad both knew what each other was thinking, and they turned around and said, what does he look like? And she went on to describe exactly what the dad had seen before. And they said, "How often do you see him?" He goes, "Oh, he's here most days." She goes, "Why don't you ever tell us anything?" "I mustn't tell people that he's here. He's hiding." And they said, what's he hiding from? And he said, "Well, he's hiding from the teachers." Now, this is where we go back to the speculation of what... You've got to take it on its merit. If this is a ghost of a child, and going by the dress, you can't date it. But if you're going back to like the 1910s or something like that, the scruffy shirt, the sort... The age of the child then that were at the school were quite young. Later on, it becomes more of an older school for children. So I'm only guessing it'd fit more into that time period. But to say he's hiding from a teacher also matched that was the site of that school. And why would he be hiding from a teacher? Why had he passed away due to that teacher's actions? Did the teacher catch him? We don't know, but it wasn't the last that they were going to hear of this child. So a few days after Christmas, they didn't really push their daughter on anything more about that. They were creeped out about it, and they kept to themselves, and they spoke to a few friends that said perhaps it's just something she's going through. But again, they didn't actually mention that they'd seen this boy as well. And then it came up to the New Year, and at New Year, they'd arranged with their next door neighbours to go round to their house that night and spend New Year's Eve with them. During the conversation, while they were over there, they thought they'd mention, have you ever seen anything weird or anything like that? They get creeped out in their house sometimes on their own. And their neighbours went, "Well, funny enough, yeah, we do." She said, yeah. She goes, "No, the wife was sitting there in the living room, and she swears that she see a young boy walk across the room in front of her." And she went on to describe the child, which was exactly the same as the child before. And the husband and wife just went cold. They just turned and said, "Well, actually, you know what? Our daughter, she thinks that this boy," she calls him the sad boy, "he's in our house all the time." And they was like, both a bit shaken by it. And they said, "Well, what do we do?" And she said, I don't know. No one's ever going to believe us if we go to someone and say that we think we've got a ghost in our house. Apparently, they did actually reach out to me at the time, thinking that I'd done sort of like paranormal readings and mediums and all that. And I said, I don't do that. I just do sort of investigation type stuff. And they went off and they got to another medium. And the medium come round, and he had been in the house, and he had told them he had connected with this boy, and that the boy had died in the house, and it was actually the back end of a building, the infirmary, or what he describes as the doctor's area. So again, this matches up with the infirmary being on that site. I don't know the particular layout of the site, but did this child, was he hiding from this teacher or this person, and he's come to his injuries, or was he ill and he was scared of that doctor or the teacher? May he just died of something natural, and because he was scared of the teachers or being ill, his soul hasn't rested, and he's scared that the teacher's going to find him, make him go back into the hospital or whatever. We don't know, but this is the medium was telling him all this information. And I have used mediums before on my investigations, and as I say, it took me a long time to find ones that I trusted. And I don't say that I don't want to say they're all rubbish, but I'm skeptic when it comes to mediums. I'm quite lucky that I found two that I could never trick. I tried to trick them all the time, never succeeded. So I hope they had a reliable person that was coming on this. You can make your own mind up when it comes to mediums and ghosts or whatever. I'm just relaying the story to you. And, they believed what they were told. The medium said he had tried to send him off to the light, but he was insisting he wanted to stay there because he was happy being there, and he was happy with the house that he was now living in, and he wished them well. Well, after that, and after New Year had passed and they carried on, nothing else had gone on. The neighbours would meet up and chat, and soon they'd forgotten about the child, and the daughter never really mentioned it. It was only once that came up to the following summer that the child was seen in the garden, and she said she was playing with the sad boy again. And they just left it as one of these creepy little things that they were living with and dealing with. And then one day, it was coming up to the end of the summer, and it was getting a bit more chilly, and their daughter was acting rather strange, and she was saying that the sad boy was becoming very, very ill, and she wanted to help him. And their child was getting really, really down about it, and she was waking up at night crying, worried about the sad boy. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to comfort her. And they spoke to their neighbours, and the neighbours were going, they're not believers in ghosts, but what the wife had seen walking across the living room still has happened a few more times since. And also they're getting like a very strange smell coming into their house of an evening around that time that boy was or did walk through. And they're saying it smells sort of like a stale garbage smell. After this, what they decided to do was to call the medium back in, and the medium told them that they were going to try and pass the child's spirit on. That they sat down and sort of called for the boy's spirit, and he was having a conversation with the spirit, and the boy was saying that he feels very, very sick, and he's scared and he is frightened. The medium told him to sort of move on and do what mediums do, and the boy seemed happy and he left. And the medium said that the boy had now passed over, and hopefully now the house will be very, very quiet. And from then, they actually had no more experiences in that house. Unfortunately for their neighbours, things were about to get a bit different. But before I tell you about what happened to the neighbours, I'm going to tell you about a couple of the regular sightings you may find if you go to Stifford. Now, Stifford has the old water tower left over from the Ardale school, and it's said that you can see a gentleman or a teenager standing at the top of that water tower. He is said to have jumped off and met his death at the bottom. And apparently he has been seen quite regular throughout the years. Even before the new housing estate was built, there was children that were staying out, or say young adults at the time in the 80s and 90s, that were staying at the Ardale school that turned around and said they'd seen this figure up there, and many times they'd called the teacher to go and check in case it was one of their friends that had gone up onto the tower to do something or tried to climb the tower. It wasn't unusual for kids that were badly behaved then to cause trouble and get out and do things. So that's one that you can go and see if you want to spend some time walking around there. The other one is the old, I think it's the head teacher's house that is still there. And what he said about that, and I shouldn't really say because I don't know if the people who live there even know, that people report seeing a ghostly figure standing outside of the house and walking towards the front door. And sometimes they say they see a ghostly figure in the window looking out. And these are the things that if people don't know, and I'll probably get a complaint now from the owner telling me that they didn't know the house was haunted. But people moan about me anyway, so it don't really matter. But yeah, so that's another one that is meant to be seen. And the other one is actually quite interesting. In 1944, the 9th of August, a German plane bomber crashed just missing some houses over by Stifford and landed in the field behind the Ardale Centre. And the field behind there is said to be haunted by the German aircrew, and they can be seen moving around on the field, and sometimes they get this a burning smell from the fire of the plane from when it crashed, an explosive smell. And again, that's normally from dog walkers who say that they see that. And again, funny enough, main time I see it is around about December when the accident happened. I I've not seen any of this myself, I'm just relaying the stories to you. But these are the 3 common ones that you can go and try and see for yourself, or go take a walk out and do an investigation and just spend some time around that village and see what you think. There's another one where some spirits of lost soldiers from World War One meant to come back to the village and looking for their old teachers. I don't really have much information on that. If you do know, let me know, because it sounds really interesting. Okay, so this is the second part of the video. This is actually a few days later, because I accidentally deleted the file that I'd recorded this bit on. So we're now looking at the neighbours of the original people that we said earlier on in the video. Now we're going to call the lady Jenny, and Jenny went through quite a strange experience. And for Jenny, she said it started on her way back from a trip out. They'd been to Lakeside with the family and they'd driven home quite late at night. And as driving back down onto the estate, she said that she thought she see a lady standing on the side of the road that was not a solid person. She said she could almost like see through her, and it freaked her out. Knowing what happened with the neighbours beforehand and a little boy, she also described the figure as a young lady, not a child. She put her age around about 13 to 14 years old. So the couple went home, and Jenny and her husband spoke about it, and she said, it's probably just a figment of her imagination. But over the next few days, Jenny felt as if she was never alone in the house, that somebody was always watching her. And so when she was doing the housework in the house, she felt as if there was someone standing behind her. She kept turning around trying to catch someone out, and she just got very, very paranoid that she's been observed and viewed. And later on in that weekend, I was out in the garden and she was doing some bits at the bottom, and what I'd done, because there's still not newish houses, but the grass had never really taken that well, and she said so I had to do a lot of maintenance on it. So I was always raking it, putting new seed down and trying to get it to grow better. And I was out there putting some seed down, and again Jenny felt as if someone was staring at her from their own house. She turned around, there's no one there, and again over the next few days this just kept happening. She's getting more and more paranoid about it. She got up early one Sunday morning and she come down to make breakfast, and she was boiling the kettle and she put some toast in, and again she had this feeling that someone was staring right behind her, like, when you're maybe at a cash point and you feel as if somebody's presence is behind you, coming into your personal space. She turned round and she described again the figure of this young lady. She said that she was wearing like a green dress, but a very faded green dress, and it was very old, not exactly tatty, but it was just a very old style dress. And then the figure stayed there for a few seconds and disappeared. And the lady, Jenny, questioned herself, did she really see this? And she spoke to her husband about it and said, do you think we've got another ghost? We've had the boy walk through here. Do you think we've got this young lady haunting us? And right from then on, they was talking about calling that medium back and see if he could help. But they didn't. They decided they'd just leave things as they were. A few days later, Jenny was on her own, out in the garden. Her husband was in the living room, and he had just been watching television. She was out there and she'd been raking the grass, and then she turned round and there was a bunch of wood over in the corner. And while she was sitting there, and she didn't really feel anything behind her, and she was sitting there, and all of a sudden she felt like she lost her balance a little bit. And she turned around and she felt as if she was being pushed away from where she wanted to be. And she sort of just thought, it was a bit strange. And then Jenny said that she picked down this piece of wood up, and as she picked it up, a nail went straight through her finger, and she'd done it so hard that it actually pierced through the other side of her finger. And she looked at it and there was a lot of blood, and she passed out. Her husband had just walked out of the living room through the patio doors into the garden, and said that Jenny, as she fainted, it looked like somebody caught her and lowered her to the ground to the side. But when her husband got down there, he turned around and said, you're so lucky you fell that way, because if you'd gone the other way, you'd landed on the upturned rake. And it was one of these metal rakes with the metal prongs sticking up, and it would have been very, very nasty. And he joked that maybe it was that young lady, saving her from falling onto the rake. And that got her thinking that actually she had felt this push away from the wood that she was going to. And if she hadn't have gone back to that wood pile, she wouldn't have put the nail through her finger. Over the next few days, again, Jenny felt as if she was not alone in the house, and she got more and more creeped out by it. But again, she never felt threatened. She said, well, she felt comfortable. It was a creepy feeling, but she never felt scared of it. And she said it was almost as if she wanted to be able to talk to this young lady. And she thought, well, maybe if I called a medium down and they could see if they can contact her and they could ask them questions. So they did. They contacted the mediums that had helped the young child beforehand, and they brought them in, and one evening they sat there. And again, you have to, these are what I've been told, and I'm relaying it to you. I won't put my personal opinion on this. This is their story, and I'm telling you how I was told it. They sat around the table. The medium was able to connect with this young lady, and she turned around and said that her name was Elizabeth, and that she'd stayed at that place in care in the early 1910s and had passed away there of an illness. And that she liked Jenny, and she felt Jenny reminded her of her late mother. And that is the reason why she'd gone into that unit beforehand, because her mum had passed away and she was taken into care there. And that Jenny resembled her mum, and she wanted to make sure Jenny was safe. The medium said he was able to comfort this spirit, this Elizabeth, and move her on into the afterlife. Jenny felt quite sad, but quite relieved that hopefully that this was over. And Jenny did say that she didn't actually have any more experiences like that. But it wasn't the only time. They still did have sort of strange occurrences in the house. Things moving around without explanation, putting things down, and they getting moved about. And they were quite puzzled by this, but they just put it down to the area that they lived in, and understanding that it did have maybe a dark past, but something had gone on there. They spoke to a few other friends around the area that lived in the same streets, and they'd not really had anything of the same. But quite a few people did actually report seeing the young lady walking up and down the street as you turn onto the estate. They hadn't really taken much notice of it and just thought it was another resident walking along. Whereas Jenny had identified it now, as that was the first time that she'd probably seen the ghost of this young lady that was going to come and guess to be her guardian angel, because if she hadn't have maybe caught her when she fell over, it would have been a nasty accident. Anyway, this is the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up and give me a subscription if you haven't, and any comments or anything you want to give me, any other information about that area. I don't really know much. It'd be nice to have more information about it if other people have had more experiences in Stifford and around that, the Ardale school, the old site. It'd be great to hear from you. So put the comments into YouTube below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.